Hey, Jim Vinoski with Manufacturing Talks here. I'm here today solo to talk about something critically important, and that is energy, and specifically about some crazy things around energy that are going on here in my home state of Michigan. A lot to learn, I think, for everybody, but certainly for people in Michigan, it's kind of crunch time to make some plans for the future because it's not looking super bright. Stay tuned. I'll tell you all about it here on Manufacturing Talks.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinoski. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
PYS Media, your digital media relations agency. Public relations, website design, digital marketing. You get found by the customers and talent who need your solutions. You get media placements in top publications, the best job candidates coming to your website, a digital presence that gets you found by the right people. Call 616-298-8798 to get started today.
Okay. Here we are. I'm Jim Vinoski with Manufacturing Talks, and I'm here to talk, like I said, about energy. Before I start, thanks as always to our sponsor, DYS Media. Look them up online. They'll do a good job for you for PR. And yeah, so energy. Let's get down to brass tacks right away here. So last week, our glorious legislators, who I will refrain from describing because I would use, as my kids call them, no words. My kids are teenagers too, so they learned a long time ago. They decided to pass clean energy legislation in our Michigan House. And, it's not so good. Here's the deal. So, trouble is, Michigan was already on a bad path. So, if we look at what was going on even before all this came down, we had plans already in place between our two major producers, Consumers Energy and DTE, where Consumers was shutting all their coal plants down by next year, or maybe 2025, something like that. And then DTE had plans to shut theirs down by 2032. Now, coal, as of 2021, was 30% of Michigan's electricity generation. And that was before the Palisades nuclear plant shut down early. All the environmentalists had a win there. Unfortunately, that also means huge chunk of energy generation's out, and there's all these glorious plans for clean energy in the future. And now our hapless governor Whitmer is trying to furiously pursue restarting the Palisades plant. And unfortunately, it wasn't apparently very well maintained because it's going to take like $1 billion to do that in a bunch of time. So who knows where that's going to land? Trouble is, that's not impacting these plans to shut all our coal plants down by 2032. And with that, almost a third of our electricity generation. So we were already on a path to very likely brownouts and blackouts here, starting really in the next 2-3 years. So to add to that now, our legislators decided they would pass requirements that we would have all clean energy sources by 2040. And what that entails is they require renewable, like wind and solar, to make up at least 60% of our utilities' energy portfolios. And the rest could be made up of things like nuclear or gas using 90% carbon capture and storage. Okay, so that all sounds wonderful. Couple problems here. One is there's no actual plan. Okay, so there's these mandates the House has passed, and they're going to go to the Senate, and our Senate is also controlled by our Democrats, so it's probably going to pass there. But there's no actual plan to get from where we are today to that glorious future in 2040. 2040 is 17 years away. You're not going to be building a new nuclear plant in that time. So it means a bunch of other stuff. So, like, for example, DTE has plans to build a bunch of wind and solar. Trouble is, they can't move fast enough. What we would have to do to fulfill the plan according to some excellent work by the Mackinac Center for Public Policy here in Michigan, is we would have to be building wind and solar at the amount we have today, 3,500 megawatts. We would have to install that every single year for the next 16 years to meet the requirements. So that's not going to happen. And again, so there's no plan. This is all left up to our generating companies to make happen to fulfill the law. In the meantime, what is going to happen is our reliable generators, coal being the beginning, but then eventually gas as well, if it doesn't have carbon capture and storage, a technology which, by the way, doesn't currently exist for this kind of application. It does not exist at scale for grid level electricity generation. So it's kind of like if you were on an airplane and someone handed you a pile of cloth and a bunch of ropes and a needle and thread and said, jump, we're confident that you can take care of yourself. You hear that all the time. Yeah, technology is going to catch up and everything's just going to be fine. It really makes no sense to make plans to tinker with our electricity supply, relying on technologies that don't exist today. But even with technologies that do exist, so wind and solar, for example, that's going to be this huge part of what we use to produce. And the trouble is, I don't know if you've been in Michigan in the wintertime, for example. Solar's capacity factor, meaning the percentage of time it's delivering, drops to below 10% in December and January. And oh, by the way, December and January are kind of cold here in Michigan. And so you've got one of your major future generating systems that's only going to deliver 10% or less of the time. And then wind in general, you're talking below 40%. So, that's hit and miss. Wind can be pretty strong around here. I ride a bike and I'm always complaining about the wind. Trouble is, you can't count on it. It's blowing when it blows. And when it's not, your wind turbines aren't producing anything. And so we've got basically this unicorn idea that these technologies that have already been shown not to be reliable, places that have gone to wind and solar, with a few exceptions. I mean, Australia does great with solar. That's not Michigan in the wintertime. Okay. Other places do really well with wind. But here in Michigan, you can't rely on those to deliver energy reliably. And so what really in the past has happened and what has allowed these things to get established on our grids is they leave the old generating capacity in place. So gas or coal, and that fills the bill when wind and solar aren't delivering. It happened in Texas over the summer. Everyone was claiming that wind and solar delivered the goods and saved the grid during the Texas summer, and it's just completely false. What saved the grid in the summer in Texas was primarily natural gas with a boost from coal and nuclear. And so we're in a pickle. Here's the deal in Michigan. Now, maybe this thing doesn't pass the Senate. I'm not counting on that. Maybe the houses, the legislature changes hands and we get some more sensible people in. I'm also not counting on that. And so I've already been saying, realistically, this is a manufacturing show. So I'm going to talk to manufacturers. Manufacturers in Michigan need to make some tough choices. And I've said straight up, really need to be laying in plans to move to another state. Because the winners in manufacturing, and to me, the winners overall for states in the future are the ones that prioritize reliable energy. And Michigan is doing the exact opposite. And so if you're a manufacturer in Michigan today, manufacturers uniquely as businesses rely on affordable and trustworthy energy supplies all the time. A lot of manufacturers run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, almost the complete year around. And if that energy isn't there to keep your plant running, you lose enormous amounts of money. You wouldn't believe the figures you can lose in a day's time in a large manufacturing plant. We're talking potentially millions of dollars. And so with that economic reality, what are manufacturers supposed to do? The thing I see is to move to a state where they don't trade in unicorns and rainbows and expect some magic to save our bacon when we mandate technologies to produce our electricity that aren't ready for prime time. The other alternative, I had David Blackman on a few months ago, and he said manufacturers really across America should all be looking at having their own energy generation on site. So generators, diesel generators, whatever it takes. It's incredible that that's where we would land, because, the idea here is we're going to save the planet with all of this renewable energy. And in the meantime, that's probably what's going to happen, is we're going to have a bunch of people running polluting generators to make up for the capacity, the much cleaner and more more environmentally responsible generating capacity that we had. We're shutting down in favor of things that we can't rely upon. So that's where we stand. Some excellent work again by the Mackinac Center for Public Policy. I hope that maybe they can convince people to call our senators here in the state and convince them not to go down this road. Again, I'm not counting on that. There are a lot of other people who've commented on this. Republicans have pointed out the flaws here in the planning. I was about to say there's really no planning here. There's no plan. There's just legislators who are backing whatever powers are behind them to say that we're going to move this in this direction of clean energy without having an actual plan or purpose of providing reliable power for the people of Michigan. So again, manufacturers, I recommend you take a good hard look at what these plans entail. We're talking about 2040 being the end game, but these things are going to start hitting here in just the next few years. I mean, again, Consumers is shutting their plants down here in the next couple of years. DTE is shutting theirs down within the next 10 by 2032. The coal plants, and they're a big, huge part of what we're relying on today. So make your plans, whether it's moving out of state or coming up with another way to power your plants. It's going to be critical to keep yourself in business. I'm Jim Vinoski. Thanks for tuning in. We're here every Tuesday. I think everything we talk about here is critical. Today's, to me, was probably one of the most critical subjects that we have in America today. I can't promise everything is going to be that critical, but everything we talk about here is critical. Thanks again.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinoski. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.